So welcome to Matrix360's RealLeader series in collaboration with Informa Canada. I'm your host, Chandran Fernando of Matrix360. Just to give you some insight, Matrix360 is a talent management and workplace strategy firm that specializes in the commercial real estate and development industry across Canada. Our purpose is to actually dial up diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace and build the future of work. In today's conversation, I'm very thrilled to have a strong leader in real estate and a friend, Karsten Lee from Weir Folds, speaking and sharing his I would say, a tidbit of his journey as a professional as he's navigated the Canadian real estate space. So just before we start, Karsten, just to give you some insight, the RealLeader series is focused on highlighting the storytelling of our leader's journey. What we want to do is we want to be able to capture the key essence of your journey so that we could actually inspire the next generation of leaders for the future of Canada. So we're very fortunate to have you, and to kickstart the conversation, I want to take it a couple of steps back, a couple of minutes ago. When you just kickstarted your career in real estate, what was your career vision when you first started out?
Well, my journey in real estate is a little bit different than what most of the other viewers are probably experiencing. I'm on the legal side, so when I came out of law school, it wasn't really a set career path for me to go into real estate. One of the most fortunate parts of my journey was when I was articling at Weir Folds. The managing partner at that time was in the real estate and leasing group, and I had the opportunity to join their group, and that's how my career in real estate was kickstarted. And I guess you can say the rest is history. I've been there for over 12 years now, and enjoying every second of it.
So your position is you're a partner in the real estate and leasing group, is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. So walk me through that. So what is your main responsibilities as a partner in real estate?
So my practice area, I specialize in leasing. So I do a lot of commercial leasing in all asset classes, industrial, retail, office. And my role is to make sure that the clients who are generally real estate leasing clients, make sure that their leasing needs are met. I help oversee a team of associates and clerks to make sure that the work gets done.
Okay, great. And 12 years, correct? Or just shy, or
yes.
in between that area?
A bit over, well, a bit over 13, including articling.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So from that, have you had any struggles or conflicts or frustrations that you have encountered on your journey as a professional in navigating yourself through the real estate field?
Well, there's obviously a lot of bumps in the road, and it's still happening. There's still bumps in the road today, and there will always be bumps in the road. But looking back over the past dozen years, I'm going to pick a few examples. One of the frustrations, I guess. What you said, conflicts, frustrations.
Yeah, or frustrations or struggles.
Okay, so one of the struggles I've had is I've been told, I don't want to toot my own horn, but people say that I do look younger than I actually am. So one of the struggles has been to make sure that the people that I deal with, when they meet me or see me, take me seriously, right? So that's one of the things. Another source of frustration has been the fact that being a lawyer, a lot of lawyers are seen to be pigeonholed in the legal role, there's a lot of things that lawyers can offer their clients in terms of the direction and strategy, and a lot of people just end up pigeonholing us as lawyers who end up just taking too much time on the details without taking a step back and looking at the big picture, so to speak.
So. So I want to explore the comment that you made, that you look young. You do, right?
Thank you.
So how do you manage that? So when you walk into that boardroom and you meet those executives and potential clients who are and who are pretty seasoned leaders, how do you manage that conversation with them so that they're actually going to learn to understand that you're there for business and you're there to actually add value to their business needs?
Well, I think it's different for each situation, with each client or with each person across the table that you're dealing with or negotiating with. It's different in every situation, but I think a lot of the times it's if you've been working with the client for a number of months or a number of years, they do end up seeing the value and the advice that you've been giving them. So they do have that certain amount of respect for you, over the course of your dealings. When it comes to
But how do you kickstart it? So, for example, when you walk in the room for your first potential meeting with a potential client, right? And they look at you, and they do that sort of implicit look and say,
Right.
"Oh, who is this guy? Like,
yeah.
should he be the part? Is he actually the partner?
Is he bringing the coffee?
Yeah, is he bringing? Yeah, like who's this guy, right?
Right.
So, until you pull out your driver's license, right, and say, "Hey, I'm actually have like 13 plus years exposure and experience."
Yeah.
You can't do that. So what do you do to connect with them to say, "I got you"?
Well, obviously the business card helps. When they do see that I'm a partner at the firm, they immediately start thinking, oh, okay, he is in a position where he can give these kinds of advice. Like he's not here, he hasn't been here for 2 seconds. So that certainly helps. But I also try to highlight, especially like you asked if it was a brand new client, I always highlight, hey, this is what I do, this is what I've been doing for over 12 years. And once they hear that, there's a certain level of comfort that they have to know that, oh, okay, this person has been around for 10, 12 years. So.
And has the experience to back him up, or his knowledge up, which is great. So every morning when I wake up, I get this buzz in my ear, which I call it the clock of opportunity. Some people call it your alarm clock, right?
Right.
So I want to change the verbiage as we move forward here. So when your clock of opportunity wakes you up every morning, right? What's that fuel that drives you to get out of bed?
So what fuels me every day is the end goal. Like I always make sure that I always have the end goal. Not necessarily in the forefront, not necessarily in the back, but always permeates everything that I do. And to reach the end goal, every day counts. So I have to make sure that everything that I set out to do in that day, whether it's a to-do list that I end up having to tick off the amount of things that I need to do that particular day. I just have to make sure that everything I do is towards that end goal, so that that you can wake up every day, like you said, and make sure that
you're achieving.
It goes according to plan.
Yeah. Okay. So as you know, we live in a great country called Canada, and we embrace this thing called diversity. Lately, this term called diversity is our strength has been really pushed for the Canadian brand, which is a great thing. However, when we look in, I wanted to share some sort of high-level tidbits in regards to the latest Canadian stats out there. So Canada has the highest population growth among the G7 countries, with a population of over 32 million. Right, 82% of the Canadian population live in large and medium-sized centres. Right. And our province, Ontario, remained by far the most populous province of Canada, representing over 38% of the Canadian population. Also, part of our platform is we specialize in diversity and equity. And 3 years ago, we put together a survey to kind of really hone in on the workplace of the commercial real estate space and understand the demographics behind it. And we were able to capture some key data points. And I want to share those data points with you and get your perspective on this, right? So what we know from the Canadian stats is that in Ontario, over 52% of the population in urban centres are female. And through our workplace strategy demographics survey and study, we found out that less than 34% of women are in senior leadership positions, right? That's one data point I want you to think about. And then in Ontario, between 35% and 54% of the working population in urban centres are people of color, right? While less than 25% are in senior leadership positions, right? So given these high-level data points, and with the increase of newcomers in Canada, with the shift in the demographics, having five generational groups working together in the workplace, and the global economic shifts happening, as a leader, right, how have you adapted to the changing shifts in our communities that foster inclusive workplaces, specifically in the real estate and development space? What are you doing as a leader to sort of recognize that there's a shift happening, there's an imbalance when it comes to our industry, that it's not being reflective of the greater population in senior leadership positions?
It's a very broad question.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So I absolutely agree with you that there's a large opportunity that needs to be taken advantage of, in that our population is very diverse, and there's a lot of different points of view that each person brings due to where they came from, their background, and what their life experiences have been. It's certainly one of the great things that make our country what it is, to be able to embrace all of these different attributes of each person is something that we must do. I must admit that I'm going to speak about two industries actually, one being the commercial real estate industry in Canada, and also the legal industry in Canada. I think that diversity is something that needs to be continued to be worked on and championed. And championed, absolutely. Personally, I think that it starts at the bottom. Like, we need to make sure that there are opportunities for these people, educational opportunities. We need to make sure that we get these diverse groups in the pipeline, in the ground floor, and help nurture their way up the corporate ladder, so to speak. So that's one of the things that I've always tried to do, is make sure that whoever comes in gets an equal shot, to give them as much education, as much training they need in order to succeed, just as their other co-workers and colleagues have had. In my personal view, there's a little bit more of ground to make up, especially if they haven't been exposed to the industry while they're growing up. But it's certainly not something that cannot be overcome.
Which is great. So it's really about access to opportunities.
Absolutely.
It's about the exposure. It's about nurturing, and it's about making sure that there's proper supports in place in the pipeline and in the corporate framework. Absolutely. That these diverse groups are supported for their success, just like everyone else has been, right?
Absolutely.
Which is a great, and thank you for sharing that. So lately, I'm sure, like, you're fully aware of this, in the last 7 to 8 years, in North America, specifically in Canada and the US, leaders are under the microscope, right? When it comes down to strategic thinking, when it comes down to value add, when it comes down to how we live, right? And what impact they could have on their internal communities, so in their business framework, and also in the greater community that they serve. So, and being a leader yourself, if you could go back in time, right, what is one piece of leadership advice that you know now that you would give yourself prior to your position where you're in right now? What would that be?
The advice I would give is to always keep an open mind and always keep the big picture in mind. Everyone is shaped by their experiences, by their education, by their upbringing, and it's difficult for many people to see or relate to experiences that they don't necessarily understand or have not been exposed to. So my advice has always been, you got to make sure that you try to see the perspective of the other person and try to keep an open mind about that, because it's certainly, once you start understanding where other people are coming from, once you understand where your colleagues come from, where the person on the other side is coming from, it really makes you a lot more able to achieve get the deal done, and move forward. So,
okay, which is great. So one last question. Being a leader, being an individual in the legal field, connecting to the commercial real estate space, and being a strategic partner for many leaders. If you could have one piece of advice for leaders when it comes to the element of equity and diversity, for them to dial it up, because it's all about dialing up, right, towards action, what would that one piece of advice, as you know, there's no silver bullet, but if you could just give one piece of advice to kickstart the conversation to action, what would that be for you?
I think it's all about awareness. I think a lot of leaders have been doing things a certain way over the past however many years, and if it's working well for them, they're not aware of other things that might be going on, just because it hasn't gone on the radar. So if they're aware that there is an issue that needs to be tackled head on, and give some data points about the success of embracing diversity, then they'd be more willing to go down the path of
championing
and championing the diversity themselves.
Yes, great. Well, thanks so much, Karsten. I really, truly appreciate it. Like, the information that you just shared to us and for us, it definitely will have an impact of the current generation of leaders and the next generation of leaders. You touched upon mentoring, you touched upon accountability, you touched upon self-responsibility, and always keep your eye on the prize. So thank you for sharing those golden nuggets with us. And
thanks for having me, Chandran.
Absolutely, pleasure. So I thank you again for joining us this afternoon. For further information, please check RealForm's social media platforms out, and thanks for joining us.